So Paige Beckers is probably going to be number one pick in the WNBA draft. Probably going to be the number one pick. But if she's not going to be number one overall pick, there is one very enticing trade package. And there is a reason why I think that it is not going to happen. A lot of people are talking about it. And a lot of people are saying it's such a big haul for to give up for Paige. And I still think that it is as unlikely that the Dallas Wings make this trade. I think if it's another team, they might do it. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about this, but the only thing less likely than Dallas Wings making this trade is the great Leeds United giving up on a game. You can see behind this microphone an old Champions 20 top. And I've just watched Junior Firpo equalise against Sheffield United. But now let's get back onto this video. So, the Washington Mystics have picks 3, 4, and 6. So they've got picks 3, 4, and 6. And I just don't think that's... Not that it's not going to be enough to get Paige. I think if it is... Let's just say if you see... if it was the Sparks. The Sparks really want Paige. But let's just say... The opposite was the case. The Mystics would have those 3 picks and the Wings have the 3 picks, the Mystics have pick 1. They would strongly consider it. But I think there's a reason why, and you can see it, like I'll talk about it today, why the Dallas Wings are not going to make this trade. And it is the 2023 WNBA draft. There was one player that was seen as generational at the time, and I'm not saying that that Aaliyah Boston's generational. She's really good. I'm not going to say Aaliyah Boston's generational, but at the time, that's what she was seen as. And not even generational. She was seen as like a perennial all WNBA. But it is really the case with Paige Beckers that she is the one who's seen as, quote, generational, or at least has the potential to be generational. And with that, there are now 3 other picks. And a lot of people would take a Malonga. Like, I think Malonga should be the number 1 pick in this draft. For me, it's a little bit different. But the Dallas Wings have been burned by this before. They had picks 3, 4, and 5. So they had a better combination of picks in 2023 WNBA draft. With the 3rd pick, they took Maddie Siegrist. With the 4th pick, which they tried to trade Alicia Gray for, who is, again, a high-level player. They traded Alicia Gray for pick 4, and it got them Stephanie Suarez, who played 1 season in the NBA and who got cut. And with the 5th pick, they took 25-year-old Lou Lopez Seneschal, and she is not playing this year. So, whatever about roster spots for 3 of these teams, it is very much like the Dallas Wings are not a team that are trying to tank. They are not out here trying to tank this game. They're not out here trying to tank the season. They are going to just slide in Paige Beckers. They have made personnel decisions based on having Paige Beckers in free agency. And yes, I understand contracts are gold dust right now. I understand there's a lot more that goes into this than just purely just will the 3 players be better than Paige, and if any of them are. Like, there's all these other decisions, but if the Dallas Wings had wanted to trade Paige Beckers, they already would have. Like the Indiana Fever, there was no offer that they could have taken to make them trade Caitlin Clark, especially for the owner. If you're asking me Lynn Dunn, I still stand by if the Chicago Sky offered, I'm not joking with this, if they offered pick 3, let's just say they offered something stupid like, because obviously the Angel Reese was involved in the Minnesota Lynx trade, their 2026 pick. Let's just say they offered pick 3, some form of a 2026 first, and like, actually no, the Chicago Sky only got pick 3 from the Mercury. Heck, if the Mercury, there was definitely a way the Mercury could have made some crazy trade to have gotten themselves Caitlin Clark. But yeah, it's one of those things where you don't want to be the GM that does not take Paige Beckers. And like, you're seeing more and more now Olivia Moss being number 1 on mock drafts, but this is different. This is different. Like, you are not the GM. You do not want to be the GM that does not take Paige Beckers. Like, I've seen, it's like in the NBA. I think there are plenty of arguments for why Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey should be number 1. Jack Shionis, why he should be number 1. Like, there are arguments for all these players why they maybe not necessarily should be number 1, but why they very easily could go number 1. And for me, it's like, you've got that people are like, having all these conversations, but we know Cooper Flagg's going number 1. And why Cooper Flagg is going number 1? Because you don't want to be the GM that doesn't take Cooper Flagg. Simply put, this is not like a Wemby situation where it's an obvious number 1. This reminds me a little bit like Zion Williamson in 2019, where a lot of people were saying, no, Jazz better, but it's like, you do not want to be the person that passes on Zion if Zion hits potential. Just like you do not want to be the person who passes on Paige if Paige hits her potential. Because we can't forget, Paige was the most hyped high school prospect of all time. Even more so than Juju Watkins, who I think is up there too. But the most hyped high school prospect of all time in women's basketball is Paige Beckers. It's Paige Beckers. Hopkins Paige is the most hyped high school prospect ever. So, and I think it's really difficult to make an argument that she's not. But at the same time, like, that doesn't mean everything. Hype is not everything. Like, it is, players' ability means more than their hype. And I think you can make the argument for somebody else. But you don't want to be the GM that does that. If you are a GM and you have Paige Beckers and it doesn't work out, she gets injured, you're still, like, you will keep your job. If you are the GM that passes up on Paige Beckers, or that takes Paige Beckers and she doesn't work out, you are not losing your job. That is what these GMs work off. What will keep them their job? And if there's a move that's going to lose them their job, they're not going to make it. And especially if you're the Dallas Wings, who only 2 seasons earlier had picks 3, 4, and 5. And yes, Maddie Seegers is a player. But you got nothing really out of that outside of Maddie Seegers. Stephanie Suarez, Lou Lopez Seneschal possibly will never play another game in the league again. It's been 2 years. Lou Lopez Seneschal's averaged 1 point per game and played 1 of 3 seasons. And then, as well as that, you have got the year before, Indiana did it. Indiana, instead of having 3, 4, and 6, Indiana had 2, 3, and 6. Oh, sorry, 2, 4, and 6. And they took Emily Ensler, who did not make it to her second year for Indiana. Nalissa Smith, who they had to attach an asset to get off her contract after taking her 4th-year option. As well as that, they took Lexi Hull, who, yes, we can always talk about how good Lexi Hull was for the second half of last year. But we also can't forget that Lexi Hull, had she not gotten hot after the Olympics, may not be in the league right now. So there are case studies in years, case studies of multiple first-round picks working. Like, the recent Cardoso thing had worked. But we have case studies in 2023 and 2022 of teams doing exactly what, teams having those 3 first-round picks, and in both situations, you could argue they hit on one of them. And in both of those years, Ryan Howard clearly number 1. Obviously, they didn't make that trade up. The clear number 1 in Aaliyah Boston was clearly number 1. Both of them clearly go number 1 in redrafts. So if there's a clear number 1 in Paige, and you can get yourself 3, 4, and 5, especially if you're not sure if you believe it's a 2-person draft, or if Olivia Miles goes back to school, it is Paige Beckers, or you're taking Sonia Citron. Is Paige worth getting Sonia Citron and 2 projects in Malonga and Josite? If I was doing it, if I was the Wings, I would. But my job does not hinge on my sport, whether or not one individual sports take is correct. So, yeah, they're not going to make this trade. No chance in hell it happens. Like, I think if you're playing 2K, you can make this trade. We can speculate all we want. And we can always say, like, this is what I would do, this is what we wouldn't do. But we're not in a position where our livelihood depends on this, realistically, this one decision. And especially if you're someone that's going to take a risk on that one decision, you better be sure as hell you're right. And the only logic for the Dallas Wings making this trade is if they believe that Dominique Malonga, if they don't believe in Paige's injury history, or they believe that Dominique Malonga is the best player in this draft. Otherwise, no, you're not making this trade. No one's making this trade.